Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to Have You Seen That with T? It is your boy T with another amazing podcast for your listening pleasure. And today we are reviewing Renfield. And this episode is strictly in dedication of Nicolas Cage. And boy, what a time he had making the movie Renfield, where he got to completely be Nicolas Cage, right? So, Renfield, to set the movie up, Renfield is about Dracula, Count Dracula, and his servant Renfield. Think his name was Michael Renfield, Michael Esquire Renfield, doesn't matter. But everyone refers to him as Renfield in the movie, especially Dracula. And just Nicholas Hoult plays this character just as it's down on his luck. I don't know if the casting of Nicholas Hoult was great because I see him as this, he's not a very meek or meager person. But at the same time, he plays him very frenetically, and he's very serviceable in this role. And they moved to Louisiana, and they find themselves in the midst of like this corrupt city of Louisiana, where the police force is on the take for this mob family, and Renfield somehow gets caught up in there. He's a part of this. Uh, Survivors Anonymous group where like the group members are there just to talk about their abusive partners and how they're trying to get out of these abusive relationships. And of course, Renfield's abusive relationship stems from Dracula make him go find innocent people and in essence kill them, right? And eat them. And just the movie plays into that, the whole survivor, being stronger than the narcissistic person that you're with. And somehow Renfield gets caught up in this mob slash police war. And that's where we bring in Aquafina, playing a police officer completely against her typecast. This police officer who's a very do-gooder, and she wants to do right by her dad who was killed by this mob family. And she gets caught up in the crosshair as well because she's like the one good cop. And I feel like every cop trope that you could throw out in the movie is thrown into this movie. It's like the cops come in there as just like the butt of every joke. You have the captain who's yelling at, and tells the backstory of this character. And it's just funny. Like, anytime you do cop movies, and it wasn't until, of course, I got older till I realized they're all the same. The police precinct, all of the secondary police officers, they're all exactly the same. And in this movie, it's no different. Um, but where this movie differs is that you add Count Dracula into this movie and Renfield, who is a super powered sidekick, who is granted some of the powers of Dracula, not all of the powers of Dracula, in order to get his food in all essence. And the movie plays out exactly the same beast that you would expect from this, awkward horror comedy. But where it differentiates itself is the action, right? It is very much an action movie, or at least to think that it's an action movie. It likes to think that it's this, it's like John Wick on, steroids. But the fight choreography just doesn't match up, right? There's a lot of blood. I will say there are buckets of blood, gallons of blood spilled throughout this movie, and um, it serves its purpose, but at the same time, it just becomes a bit too much, right? This wasn't the comedy that I was expecting going into it. I thought it was going to be more of a cerebral type of comedy, like a more of a master servant, comedy. And those scenes are there, right? Nicolas Cage, every time Nicolas Cage and Nicholas Hoult are on the same screen, like there is a lot of chemistry. There's a lot to be explored between the Dracula and Renfield dynamic. This movie just chooses not to go there fully. It doesn't commit to that. It commits more to trying to be an action comedy. And I think that's where it stops itself from being completely great. When I saw the second preview for the movie with more of the action where he's ripping people's arms off, that's when it kind of lost me because that wasn't the movie that I wanted it to be, and that's on me. That's completely my personal bias. It's not the movie that I thought it was going to be. And there are definitely going to be people who love it because of the action. I just thought it could have been great if of course, have the action in there, but just kind of go deeper into the dynamic between Renfield and Dracula. The most of the movie, Dracula is trying to nurse himself to full power, so you see Nicolas Cage in this gruesome makeup, which is terrifically done, by the way. Every time he's on the screen, he looks amazing, whether he's deformed or whatever the case may be. So terrifically, you know, kudos to the make wardrobe and makeup, for this movie. But once it kicks in the second gear, once that third act comes in, I kind of found myself disinterested in the outcome because we all knew the outcome that Renfield was going to somehow survive. The question was, how is Dracula going to survive? Because to me, this shouldn't be a one-off movie. I feel like there's a lot more legs to it, or could at least have more legs to it. But at the end of this movie, I don't think there are any more legs to it. I think they just wanted to make this fun movie, and they made a fun movie. I think it was a good movie. It was a good, Saturday matinee movie to go check out with your girlfriend or your boyfriend, just to hang out and watch a good movie. But it just stopped itself from being completely great. Um, and to no fault, I think it was trying to do one or too many things. I think Awkwafina was pretty good in this movie. She's grown on me ever since, Shang-Chi. But, it just, like I said, it's a good movie. Could have really been great. Really could have been a great movie. But once again, it wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad movie. I can't dump on it. I wanted to midway through, but then it kind of redeemed itself going into the second and third act because it just kind of got a little bit stale somewhere between the first and second act. But then it just kicked itself into gear, and it went into a different gear, and it saved itself from being a pretty bad movie. But speaking of bad movies, Nicolas Cage has starred in a string of, direct TV, direct to DVD, or direct to streaming movies, the past, I would say, decade or so. It's been a while since Nic Cage, really was the star of the show. Last year, the massive weight of Unbearable Talent came out and kind of, shed some light on that, and shed some light on some of the issues he was having. I didn't know it was an IRS thing where dude wasn't paying his IRS, so he was broke pretty much. So he was just doing movies to do movies, right? Um, but today's episode, we're really going to shine a light on Nic Cage. I think he's one of our finest actors. He's a fun personality when he goes full Nic Cage and he does the face off thing. He just does those crazy Nic Cage eyes and those Nic Cage mannerisms, which he did fantastically in Massive Weight, which is my number 10 movie of my top 10 movies of Nicolas Cage. Once again, this is an episode solely dedicated to Nicolas Cage. And Massive Weight is my number 10 on this list, and it was a fun movie. And what Massive Weight told me is that Pedro Pascal can do anything, right? There's a meme out there saying that the only thing that could save The Witcher season 3 would be Pedro Pascal. And I believe that, right? Like, I think that you put him into any circumstance in any movie, he adds weight to it other than Wonder Woman 1984, playing Maxwell Lord, which is one of the worst movies that I think I've seen in a very long time. He was good. He was actually really good in that movie. He just couldn't save that movie because that movie was pretty much a direct to HBO Max train wreck. But Pedro Pascal and Nicolas Cage in this movie, kind of a buddy action movie. It was very fun having Nic Cage play Nic Cage and kind of get into this situation in which, what would Nic Cage do in this situation? Kind of like what would Kevin Bacon do? But just a really fun movie. I enjoyed it. It was a lot better than it had any right to be. Right when I saw the first preview, I thought to myself, this movie's going to be terrible. And it just wasn't. It was a really fun movie. So I think as far as Nick Cage movies, it should be in the top 10 because it's Nick Cage starring, uh, Nick Cage playing Nick Cage, starring Nick Cage, which is awesome. My number nine on this list, I made a list and then I forgot one key movie on this list. And my number nine was Lord of War until I thought of Mom and Dad. Right, so Mom and Dad definitely deserves to be on this list of top 10. If you haven't seen Mom and Dad, it stars, it's a movie about one day all adults just start going crazy and killing their kids, right? They go insane, teachers in high school. So Mom and Dad, Nicolas Cage plays the dad, and Selma Blair plays the mom. And their kids escape their school. They get home and they're being attacked by Mom and Dad. And I don't think in the movie they ever show exactly why, what happened. I think it was like some type of light or something in the sky. I can't remember exactly. But this movie was peak Nick Cage also. He plays this insane dad just trying to kill his kids. And the movie, once again, a movie that should not have been as good as it was, but the script writing, the script was tight, the action was tight, the tension was tight, and it was a not very scary movie, but a very eerie movie. Like, what happens if you do come home and your mom and dad are really trying to kill you? But you don't want to kill your mom and dad, right? You're just trying to figure out what exactly is going on. And the movie just goes off the rails, but the key to the whole movie was just Nicolas Cage getting to play this deranged Nicolas Cage type character. And it was just fantastic. It was a fantastic movie that definitely needed to be in my top 10. Number 8 is National Treasure, book 1 and book 2. I thought those are just fantastic action movies, back when the big budget, global scaling action movies had its merit. This kind of movie spawned the Fast and the Furious, those big epic, quest in which the hero has to go on to. And this is a lot of mysteries, a lot of puzzles, very video game, Tomb Raider-esque in the delivery and in the execution of this movie, but it was just a fun movie. I enjoyed the first National Treasure. I enjoyed the second one. They did make a show on Disney Plus, which I haven't watched yet. Of course, it doesn't star Nick Cage. I don't know if he ever shows up in the show, but I want to check that out one day because I thought National Treasure had it for its time. During its run, made a lot of money, and it was just a fun, very fun, family action oriented movie. The next movie, my number 7 on my list, is definitely I'm pretty sure I'm probably the only one who ranks this movie in top 10 Nicolas Cage movies. And I'm a big stickler for romantic comedies, and It Could Happen to You is one of my all-time favorite romantic comedies. It's completely outlandish. It's actually based on a true story. A New York cop goes into a restaurant one day and he can't pay, or he can pay his bill, but he doesn't have enough money for a tip. And he tells the waitress, played by Bridget Fonda, that, hey, my tip is this lottery ticket. If I win the lottery, I'm going to give you half of my money. So what happened? This guy wins the lottery, and I can't remember exactly how much he won, but it's enough to change your life, right? Any type of lottery win is more money than you had yesterday, right? So he wins this money, and he's dating Rosie Perez, who was white hot during this time in the 90s, coming off of School Days and stuff like that. And she has that voice, and she plays the annoying girlfriend to a T, who gets mad, and she thinks that, Nicolas Cage is cheating on her with the waitress, who, by the way, these two kind of, do hit it off and fall in love, because this is just, an unnatural, a very, very noble gesture that he did, because he's a cop and he's a man of his word. He's an NYPD cop. So how loosely based this is on a true story, well, that remains to be seen. But yeah, like the story is it's a very cute story. It's a very cute movie. It's Nicolas Cage not quite being Nicolas Cage, but it's one of the movies I grew up loving. Me and my sister watched this movie probably 50 times. We had it on, VHS. back in the day, and it was just a very cool romantic comedy with a very happy ending. This is before Kickstarter and GoFundMe, where they end up losing the money because the girlfriend sued him. Was like, hey, or I think she was his wife actually. She sued him, and he just gave her the money in the divorce. And all of these good-natured people, gave out the kindness of their heart and gave them a whole bunch of money so that I guess they could live happily ever after. I guess that type of stuff only happens in movies, but apparently that did happen in real life. And I'll reserve my political views and my my social economical views on that movie and how unrealistic it is. But yeah, I loved the movie growing up during my innocent days. Fun movie, great Nicolas Cage movie. My number six movie is Gone in 60 Seconds. Need I say more? There was a time in the 90s and 2000s where everything was about heist. They were all heist movies. And this was one of those movies where he had to, steal 60 cars in a day. And it was just a very fun movie. Should not have been as good as it was. I think Angelina Jolie was in this movie as well, and I loved it. Very fun action movie. Number five will be Raising Arizona. Why? Because it's Raising Arizona. It's a very bizarre, peculiar, funny, way ahead of its time movie that was made in the 80s. And it just started like that to me was the movie that put Nick Cage on the map. Some people would say Moonstruck because, snap out of it, that whole line. But I think Raising Arizona really put Nicolas Cage in a different stratosphere of actor because of his weird, quirky portrayal of his character in that movie, who I can't remember his name. I watched that movie probably 20 years ago, but it definitely stuck in my mind. Number four on this list is Kick Ass. Kick Ass. Why is this on my list? Because Nick Cage plays Batman in Kick Ass. He pretty much plays the character pattern after Batman. He trains Hit Girl on how to be a vigilante because that's what he was. And he trained her in a very extreme manners. And it wasn't Nick Cage being Nick Cage, but it was just a great movie. I really enjoyed Kick Ass. It was a lot better than anyone gave it right to be. And once again, it was a great movie. Number three, once again, another movie on this list that I'm pretty sure I'm the only one who has it on my top 10 Nicolas Cage movie list, The Family Man. I watched The Family Man every single Christmas, every year, probably since the first year that I watched it. I watch it every single year. I watch it once a year. It is my favorite Christmas movie. It has no rights to be. Maybe it's because I'm completely infatuated with Taya Leone, or Don Cheadle plays a great role in one of his earlier roles where he was just getting into his bag. But it's just Nick Cage playing a guy who wakes up on Christmas and ends up living the life that he uh, didn't know he ever needed. Right? Him and Taya Leone were high school sweethearts. They were college sweethearts. And when they graduated college, Tay Leone took a job in London and he never fought for her. So Don Cheadle, playing his angel, his guardian angel, shows up and gives him a glimpse of what life would be like if he did fight for her. They had two kids. He became a father. He was this really rich businessman, and he became a father. He became a family man. He worked at the family's tire shop. And he just learned how to love other people and care about other people during this movie. And it's just a very fun family movie. I enjoy it. Like I said, I watch it every single Christmas. So that means I've watched it and I've probably watched it more than just once every Christmas, or during the early years, I probably watched it a few times. So I probably watched this movie about 50 to 60 times over the years. And it's just become part of my Christmas routine. So that is why it makes it into my top 10 list. It's just one of my favorite Nick Cage movies. It's not very Nick Cage's. It's not actually, he does have a few Nick Cage scenes in the movie. But for the most part, it's a very subdued role for him. Number two on the list, and once again, this is where we get into, you know, I am missing one movie off this list that could have been on this list, that probably should have been on this list, and that's The Rock, starring Sean Connery. That really was the movie that set off the summer of Nic Cage or the year of Nic Cage. But that's not my number two. My number two on this list is Con Air, right? You cannot go wrong with Con Air. Put the money back in the basket or whatever the hell he says at the bottom of the plane with the bunny. Like, oh my gosh, what a fun movie. You got Steve Buscemi, you got Ving Rhames, you got all of these cast of characters on a plane. You got Billy Bob Thornton, John Cusack, I think it was, like whoever played the cops in this movie trying to chase down these planes, this plane full of convicts that gets hijacked. This is Nic Cage at his absolute finest. This is like one of those 90s action movies that should has absolutely no right of being this good. And the only reason it's not number one is because it gets overshadowed by a movie that came out the exact same year. And my number one movie on my list, you guessed it, it's Face Off, right? You Castor Troy is one of the greatest action movie characters ever, played both by Nicolas Cage and John Travolta. Both of these characters were amazing in this movie. It is just John Woo, one of my favorite action directors of all time, put together this just immaculate movie of just action, carnage, humor, adventure. And it just was a great movie, right? John Travolta and Nicolas Cage on the screen. Both of them were so white hot at the time. They were the biggest actors in Hollywood at the time of the making of this movie, which, of course, now sounds pretty ridiculous now that you think of it, but I mean, Face Off, one of the best movies ever made to me, one of the greatest action movies ever made. Yeah, watching it 30 years later, 20 years later, it seems very hokey, very of the times. But during the time when it came out, it was that. It was the best action movie of the year. It's probably one of the best action movies of the decade, starring two of the best action stars of that decade, and directed by one of the greatest action directors of all time in John Woo. Face Off is my number one Nic Cage movie. Why? Because it's Face Off, right? I'm gonna steal his face off. Like it just the mannerisms, how both of the characters could really pull from each other. Like John Travolta, when they were both the other character, either the agent or Castor Troy, like they both played both roles so fantastic. I wish Nic Cage could have played Castor Troy. Like I wish they would have actually reversed the roles where John Travolta was Castor Troy and then he turned into the agent, and Nic Cage was the agent and turned into Castor Troy. I think more Nic Cage on the screen would have been a lot better. But John Travolta, of course, did really great. But just a great, great movie. Face Off, my number one Nic Cage movie of all time, and I should have added The Rock in there somewhere. Just go ahead and add that as an honorable mention because The Rock with Sean Connery was fantastic. But that's my top 10 list of Nic Cage movies. I know I'm missing some other ones off the list. I heard Pig was really good. I haven't seen that one. And of course, the voice acting he did in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I didn't want to add any voice acting in there. I wanted some full live action Nic Cage. I heard, Color in Space was really good, but those are movies I haven't seen, so maybe I'll check those out one day. And maybe when I make another list in another 10 years, we'll be able to add some more movies to the Nic Cage list of great Nic Cage movies. But that is my list. I'm gonna stick with it until the next list that I do. Probably did miss some movies in there. Last thing we'll talk about on this movie, next week we got Evil Dead Rises, which once again I'm terrified to see, but I am going to go see because I am not a punk. I am not a bitch. I'm going to go watch Evil Dead Rises. I'm going to give you the best movie review that I can give. I might even watch the Evil Dead remake again because this is, a sequel to that. And I did enjoy the first, that Evil Dead remake. It was really gory. It was really graphic. I watched it in the comfort of my own home so I could close my eyes and not look scary, while I watched that movie. But Evil Dead Rises looks really good from the previews. And I'll definitely go check that out next week. I saw a few previews this week, so some movies that are on my radar now. There's a movie called Joyride, about four Asian American women who go on a quest to China to find one of their birth parents. This movie looks hilarious. Like I don't know any of the actresses in the movie, but the preview that I saw last night during before Renfield was hilarious. The movie is called Joyride. It looks really fun. It looks really funny. And I'm looking forward to that. We also got Strays that's coming soon. And finally, the Marvels trailer hit. And once again, men being men, they are review bombing the Marvels before it even comes out. I don't know why everyone hates. I want to call it Allison Brie so much. I don't know why they hate Captain Marvel so much. I don't know exactly what it is. For some reason, people are still looking forward to the Flash, but they're already, hating on the Marvels. I have a lot of theories on the fragile egos of men and why they hate, an actor, uh, Brie Larson. That's her name. I don't know why I wanted to call her Allison Brie. That's another actress that I love, Brie Larson. I don't know why men hate her so much, but I'm looking forward to the Marvels. The preview looked amazing. I loved Miss Marvel, the Disney Plus series. I really enjoyed that a lot. Kamala Khan, she was fantastic on that show. Monica Rambeau on WandaVision. You're going to get all three of those characters together. And they seem to be swapping powers, which is very, very unique for a superhero movie. And it shows us where we are in superhero space, where you can go and do these just different ideas, where before you just had to show people on the screen with powers. Now you can go and do these unique stories because we're so far into the superhero space where you can go and do these very unique stories telling different superhero stories. But of course, there are people with powers, and of course, there are supervillains in these movies. So I'm really looking forward to this. It comes out in November. Unfortunately, I wish it would come out sooner. It was supposed to come out this summer. They pushed it back to November. They also pushed back Aquaman. I think that got pushed back to 2024. Um, God bless DC. I don't know what you guys are going to do. Good luck. Hopefully, you make some good movies. But yeah, that's going to end this podcast this week. I really do appreciate you guys listening in. It's been fun talking about Nic Cage and my love for Nic Cage. Hopefully, he finds his role some way into the Marvel Cinematic Universe at some point in time. Being one of the Kang variants, that will be very fun. But yeah, that's going to end this podcast until next week. Next week will be Evil Dead Rises. I'm excited for that. And go check out Renfield. Go check out John Wick 4. Go check out Super Mario Brothers. Go check out Dungeons and Dragons. Those are my picks for, your movie going pleasures this weekend. We got a few more coming. There's a Mama Mafia movie that I really wanted to see, but I'm gonna wait till that comes out on direct to streaming. That stars Nicolette. No, not Nicolette Sheridan. Tony Nicolette or Tony Collette. There you go. I'm so sorry. I just mess up people's names because I probably should do some more research before I just start doing these podcasts. But I think that's what makes it fun for me because I just do it off the hip. I make a list and I just talk about my love for these movies. But Mama Mafia, that came out this week as well. I'll probably wait for that to come out on streaming. If you do go check it out, go ahead and drop a review in the comments. Tell me if it was good or bad, or whether I should spend my hard-earned money to go check it out. But until next week, that is going to be it. I do appreciate you guys listening. Like and subscribe to the Have You Seen That with T YouTube channel. Like and subscribe to the Have You Seen That with T Facebook group. I drop the reviews there. We talk about our love for movies there. And also definitely, drop a comment in there. Tell me your top 10 Nicolas Cage movies. And if not, tell me if my list was trash. I think, I'm pretty sure everyone, once they hear it can, it could happen to you, probably tuned out. But this is one of my favorites. But once again, that will conclude this week's podcast. I will see y'all next week with another dope podcast to step to. Yes, I do miss you, Jalen and Jacoby. That is always going to be my ode to you, one of my favorite podcasts that I've ever listened to. But yeah, that'll do it for this week. I'll catch you next time.